Usually when we talk about the physics of the human body, we have a certain expectation of, predictability.
Right, like cause and effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take a car crash, for instance.
Right.
You can calculate the speed of the vehicles, you can calculate the kinetic force of the impact, and the physics dictates almost exactly how much damage the chassis is going to take.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a direct, undeniable equation, right? High speed plus sudden resistance equals catastrophic structural trauma.
It is comforting to rely on that kind of math. I
Yeah.
mean, we naturally want to believe that mechanical forces applied to any physical structure will always yield predictable results.
Whether it's steel or fiberglass or human tissue.
Exactly. You want to categorize the results based on how fast things are moving.
But then you step into the delivery room,
Oh, boy. Yeah.
specifically into the realm of modern obstetrics,
Yeah,
and suddenly that straightforward equation it gets thrown completely out the window.
it really does.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. If you're a fellow learner who loves getting to the bottom of complex topics, you are in the right place. Today, we are looking at a stack of incredibly diverse sources.
And we really mean diverse.
We're talking dense biomechanical engineering models of the female pelvis, international clinical obstetrics journals, standard clinical guidelines, and even deep dives from modern midwifery podcasts.
It's quite the mix.
It is. Because our mission today is to separate the terrifying internet rumors from the actual physics and clinical data. We are tackling a fascinating question. Can a very fast birth, what the medical field officially calls precipitous labor, actually cause severe pelvic floor injury?
It's such a wild intersection, right? Biomechanical engineering, deeply ingrained medical anxiety, and actual observed human biology.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the hook here, the central paradox, is that the laws of physics suggest that a rapid birth should cause massive physical trauma.
Right.
But the latest global hospital data reveals a completely different, almost backwards reality.
To understand why people fear fast labor, we first have to understand the intense mechanics of what the pelvic floor endures during just a completely average, normal-paced delivery.
We have to look at the baseline to understand the extreme.
Exactly.
So the primary baseline structure we're focusing on is the levator antemuscle.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you listening, this is essentially the main muscular hammock supporting the entire pelvic floor. And based on the biomechanical models in our sources, during the pushing phase of labor, this specific muscle stretches an absolutely staggering 3.26 times its resting length.
Which is just wild.
To visualize that, imagine taking a standard 10-inch rubber band and pulling it until it's over 32 inches long.
Wow.
That's what this muscle is actively doing to accommodate the baby's head.
Yeah.
It almost defies belief that living human tissue can accomplish that without snapping.
It really is an extraordinary biological feat. But what's fascinating here is a concept from the biomechanical studies called strain rate.
Strain rate. Okay.
Yeah. From an engineering perspective, structural failure or, injury isn't just about how far material stretches. It's equally dependent on how fast it stretches.
Oh, that makes sense.
The studies clearly show that increasing the strain rate, meaning stretching a passive muscle too quickly, drastically increases the risk of strain-related injuries.
That sounds exactly like the silly putty effect.
The silly putty effect.
Yeah. If you take a piece of silly putty in your hands and pull it apart very slowly, it stretches smoothly and seems to go on forever. It adapts.
Oh, right, yeah.
But if you take that same piece of silly putty and yank it outward in a fraction of a second, it just snaps cleanly in half. It can't handle the sudden velocity.
That analogy perfectly illustrates a property called viscoelasticity.
Viscoelasticity.
Right. Living tissue is viscoelastic. It has both fluid-like properties that allow it to flow and deform, and solid-like properties that allow it to snap back.
Okay, I'm with you.
When tissue is stretched slowly, the fluid-like properties have time to adapt to the stress. But when a baby descends rapidly down the birth canal, the tissue just doesn't have the time to demonstrate those normal viscoelastic properties.
That's the yanking on the silly putty.
Exactly. Fetal head moving too fast causes the strain rate to spike. And that creates severe shearing forces that can easily exceed the biomechanical tolerance of the vaginal and perineal tissues.
Which theoretically leads to some devastating structural damage. The sources talk about levator avulsion,
Yes.
where the intense speed literally causes the levator antemuscle to tear completely away from its attachment point on the pubic bone.
Or another condition documented in the literature called an obstetric rectal buttonhole tear.
Just the name of that sounds awful.
It is. It's a highly specific, very rare type of severe injury to the tissue separating the vagina and the rectum. And it is directly correlated in the literature with the rapid mechanical stress of a fast fetal descent.
The tissue simply cannot get out of its own way fast enough. So if you look at those biomechanical realities, the standard medical advice naturally assumes a fast birth is a highly dangerous, almost reckless event.
It makes complete logical sense based on the physics.
It really does. Before we get into what actually happens in hospitals, we need to establish what fast actually means in this context.
Right. In the clinical literature, precipitous labor has a very strict definition.
Okay, what is it?
It's a labor that lasts less than 3 hours from the very onset of regular contractions to the actual birth of the baby. 3 hours total, start to finish.
Wow. For anyone who has labored for 24 or 36 hours, a 3-hour birth probably sounds like absolute magic.
I bet.
But if you read the standard medical advice, it's treated like a 5-alarm fire. I was looking through the warnings from highly respected institutions like the Cleveland Clinic and Baby Center.
And what do they say?
They explicitly warn that precipitous labor puts you at a high risk for major complications. They list heavy bleeding, postpartum hemorrhage. They warn about retained placentas. They warn about severe bruising and horrific 3rd or 4th degree tearing of the cervix, the vagina, and the perineum. It is painted as a total biological system failure.
The entire process is heavily pathologized. The prevailing assumption in modern obstetrics is that a body moving that fast is a body entirely out of control.
Wait, hold on. Looking at the physics we just discussed, the internet's panic completely tracks.
Oh, for sure.
You just told me the muscle stretches over 300% in a fraction of the normal time. The contractions have almost 0 breaks, and the baby descends like a rocket.
Right, giving the tissue no time to stretch.
The tissue gets no time to use its viscoelastic properties. The physics literally guarantees a massive tear. So do the delivery room statistics actually show this massive spike in catastrophic injuries?
Well, when we move from theoretical physics and internet warnings to the actual observed retrospective population data from global hospitals, the story changes entirely.
Wait, really?
Yes. The biological reality completely contradicts the physics equation.
Here's where it gets really interesting. One of our sources is a detailed breakdown from the Melanie the Midwife podcast. And she looked directly at retrospective hospital data to see if these doom and gloom warnings were actually manifesting in delivery wards. She wanted to know if women giving birth in under 3 hours were physically suffering more trauma than women with average-length labors.
And the clinical data she highlights completely dismantles the assumption of trauma.
Let's hear the numbers.
Let's look at a major study conducted in a maternity hospital in Japan, published in 2014. Researchers tracked a large cohort of women, comparing those who had precipitous labors with those who had normal-length labors. They were specifically looking for severe perineal tears. The exact injuries the biomechanical models suggest should be skyrocketing because of the high strain rate. The rates between the two groups were virtually identical. It was 3.6% in the fast labor group and 3.7% in the normal length labor group.
To put that in perspective for you listening, that means whether a woman labored for an average of 15 hours or a rapid-fire 2 hours, the exact same tiny fraction of women experienced a severe tear.
Exactly.
The high speed of the birth did not increase the structural damage to the tissue at all.
It gets even more compelling when the Japanese researchers looked specifically at second-time mothers, women who had gone through childbirth at least once before. There were exactly 0 severe perineal tears in the precipitous labor group.
Wait, 0?
Not a single one.
The strain rate is absolutely peaking. The baby is descending at maximum velocity, and the tearing rate for second-time moms is sitting at 0.
Yep.
The tissue somehow remembers how to stretch. But surely the sheer speed causes massive internal issues from the shock to the system, like the heavy bleeding the Cleveland Clinic warned about.
Well, a 2021 study out of Saudi Arabia looked at matched groups of women to control for all those outside variables. They specifically tracked those exact complications: postpartum hemorrhage and internal pelvic trauma.
And what do they find?
Again, they found absolutely no statistically significant increase in hemorrhage or trauma for the women who delivered in under 3 hours.
That is wild.
The complication rates hovered around an incredibly low 1.5% for both the fast labor group and the normal labor group.
If the mother's tissue is somehow miraculously absorbing this kinetic energy flawlessly without tearing or bleeding out, the baby must be acting as the crumple zone.
That's a good way to put it.
The baby has to be taking the brunt of that rapid physical transition.
That was the exact hypothesis behind a massive 2021 study conducted in France. Researchers analyzed over 2,600 women with fast labors and compared them to a matching group with longer labors, specifically looking at infant outcomes.
Okay.
They were searching for transient tachypnea, which is a form of rapid breathing and respiratory distress in newborns. The prevailing clinical thought was that a precipitous birth shocks the baby's delicate system, not giving their lungs time to clear fluid.
And what did the numbers actually show?
The data showed that babies born fast actually had lower rates of respiratory distress. Yes, it was 1.6% for the babies born under 3 hours, compared to 2.7% for the babies born after longer normal-length labors.
So, synthesizing all of these clinical findings, the takeaway is completely upside down from where we started.
It really is.
Yes, a fast labor has an incredibly intense emotional impact, and it certainly carries logistical risks like, accidentally giving birth in the passenger seat of your car on the shoulder of the highway.
Definitely a risk.
But statistically, from a biological standpoint, it is not a pathological malfunction. A fast body isn't a broken body, it is simply a highly efficient body.
Which leaves us with a massive contradiction to resolve.
Right.
We know that pulling tissue too fast causes it to tear. The biomechanics of strain rate are real physical laws, yet the actual clinical injury data shows these rapid 300% stretches are not causing massive third and fourth degree tears in real life.
My brain is struggling to reconcile this. How can the physics of strain rate be entirely correct, but the tissue survives unscathed? Why doesn't the fast stretching cause the damage the engineers predict?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to stop looking at fast labor in a complete vacuum.
Okay.
To understand why fast labor isn't causing massive trauma, we have to deeply examine what happens to human tissue when labor is slow.
The opposite end of the spectrum.
Yes. We talked heavily about strain rate, the speed of the stretch, but the other side of the biomechanical coin is tissue compression and ischemia.
Let's define ischemia for everyone, because this is the mechanism that changes everything we know about pelvic floor trauma.
Ischemia is a severe restriction in blood supply to tissues, causing a critical shortage of oxygen and glucose needed for cellular metabolism.
Basically, the tissue is starving.
Right. When a woman has a prolonged second stage of labor, meaning she is actively pushing for more than 1 or 2 hours, the tissue of the pelvic floor is undergoing a completely different, much more insidious kind of trauma.
What's happening exactly?
The fetal head is resting against the levator muscle, acting like a heavy bowling ball, exerting tremendous sustained physical pressure.
How much pressure are we actually talking about when that fetal head sits there for hours?
The clinical data shows the fetal head exerts between 100 to 230 millimeters of mercury of pressure directly on the pelvic floor tissue.
That sounds high, but I need a comparison.
Now, to understand how heavy that is, think about what happens when you fall asleep on your arm in a weird position and wake up to find it completely numb and lifeless.
Ugh, the worst feeling.
That happens because a relatively small amount of pressure has temporarily compressed your blood vessels. In human tissue, sustained compressive forces of just 20 to 80 millimeters of mercury are enough to cause blood perfusion in the capillaries to cease entirely.
Wait, hold on. The blood physically cannot push through the tiny vessels at 20 to 80 millimeters of mercury, and the baby's head is applying up to 230.
Yes.
That is triple the pressure required to completely cut off the blood supply.
Which means during a prolonged labor, that delicate pelvic tissue is being systematically crushed. It is deprived of oxygen, and it begins undergoing ischemic necrosis.
It's dying.
Essentially, yes. The tissue is slowly dying from lack of blood flow over a period of hours. As it suffocates, it loses its natural elasticity. It becomes incredibly fragile and brittle.
Oh, wow. That makes perfect sense of the contradiction. It's the difference between stretching a fresh, brand new rubber band versus stretching a rubber band that has been left out baking in the hot sun for a week.
That is a brilliant way to look at it.
The fast labor is yanking on a fresh, highly elastic rubber band.
Yep.
It might be a sudden shock, but the material is perfectly healthy and handles the strain.
Exactly.
The slow labor is pulling on a sun-baked, fundamentally weakened rubber band. By the time that oxygen-deprived tissue actually has to stretch that 3.26 times its length to let the baby out, it's already profoundly compromised.
Precisely. And the ischemia is only half the danger of a slow labor.
There's more.
There is a second, even more destructive factor we have to consider regarding prolonged pushing. It dramatically increases the likelihood of severe mechanical interventions.
Ah, the forceps and vacuums. I saw the statistics on this in the sources, and they are truly grim.
They are?
When a labor is slow, the tissue is ischemic, and the mother becomes physically exhausted, doctors inevitably step in to extract the baby mechanically. Forceps are large stainless steel tongs that are inserted into the birth canal to go around the baby's head.
Right.
And the biomechanical sources state that pulling a baby out with forceps applies an average of 75 psi pounds per square inch of outward force directly to the surrounding vaginal and pelvic tissues.
To put 75 psi into perspective, standard heavy-duty car tires are inflated to about 35 psi.
Oh my gosh.
The forceps are applying more than double the outward pressure of a fully inflated car tire against the delicate, already oxygen-starved walls of the pelvic floor.
It's an unimaginable amount of blunt force trauma. The medical text specifically noted that women who have forceps deliveries are 10 times more likely to suffer from stress urinary incontinence a full 7 years after the birth.
Yep.
And up to 80% of women who experience a forceps delivery have detectable permanent anal sphincter injuries when you look at their tissue on an ultrasound. 80%.
This is the crux of the entire paradox. While a fast birth absolutely increases the strain rate, the speed of the stretch, a slow birth increases the duration of tissue compression, leading to cellular suffocation, and it dramatically raises the risk of severe, violent mechanical intervention with steel instruments.
So the trade-off.
Ultimately, the body's natural, highly efficient, rapid labor seems to balance these forces far better than the medical establishment historically gave it credit for.
Because the tissue is healthy.
The tissue can handle a brief, intense, high-speed stretch beautifully. What it cannot handle is hours of crushing ischemia followed by a 75 psi steel intervention.
So what does this all mean for you listening? We started today with this widespread assumption that a precipitous labor, a birth under 3 hours, is a terrifying medical emergency destined to destroy the pelvic floor.
That was the theory.
Yes, the physics of birth are undeniably extreme. Stretching a muscle over 300% is intense, no matter how you look at it. And experiencing a birth from the first contraction to holding a baby in under 180 minutes is undoubtedly a wild, overwhelming ride.
Absolutely.
But the global population data clearly shows that a fast birth doesn't automatically mean a broken body. In fact, if your body does this, it might just be operating at peak, unbelievable biological efficiency.
Which raises an important question, something we really want to leave you to mull over as we wrap up.
Okay, lay it on us.
If the clinical data explicitly shows that the physical injuries, the severe tears, the internal hemorrhaging, the respiratory distress in the babies aren't significantly worse in a fast birth, well, perhaps the real trauma of precipitous labor isn't biomechanical at all.
Wait, if the physical tissue is surviving unscathed, the damage has to be coming from somewhere else.
Exactly. Think about the psychological and neurological reality of a 3-hour labor. Your nervous system is plunged into extreme shock.
Oh, totally.
The physical transition is so fast that the brain is flooded with raw adrenaline, with absolutely no time to acclimate to the changing sensations.
Often the speed of the labor means an inability to get to a hospital in time to receive an epidural or any pain relief.
Right. The mother is stripped of the mental preparation that usually happens over hours of early labor.
So the tissue was perfectly prepared, but the mind was completely ambushed.
Exactly. The injury isn't necessarily in the tissue. The injury is in the mind's processing of the event. It really asks us to critically consider our modern medical frameworks.
How so?
In our highly clinical, highly scheduled hospital systems, do we sometimes confuse a wildly efficient, physically safe physiological process with a deeply traumatic emotional one?
That is a profound question.
Do we label a woman's body as malfunctioning and dangerous simply because her conscious mind didn't have the time to catch up with the sheer speed of her physiology?
The body did the complex biomechanical math perfectly, but the brain was left spinning from the speed of the crash.
Very well said.
It goes right back to that idea we started with at the top of the show. The human body isn't just a simple linear physics equation. It's a complex, beautifully efficient, highly adaptable system that often knows exactly what it's doing, even when the sheer speed of it terrifies us.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the real science of fast labor. Keep asking questions, keep looking past the sensational internet headlines, and never stop challenging the things you read. Until next time.